She tried to win his love with a Ferrari, but the black man told her to leave his porch immediately. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind of morning where nothing is supposed to happen. The birds were doing their thing, a lawnmower was going somewhere down the street, and the air smelled like cut grass and early summer. David was sitting on his front porch with a cup of coffee in his hand, wearing an old gray t-shirt and some house slippers, just enjoying the peace. That was all he wanted, just peace. David was 47 years old. He had worked hard his whole life, not the kind of hard work people brag about on the internet, but the real, quiet kind. He started his own landscaping business from nothing. No help, no loans from family. Just him, a second-hand truck, some tools, and a willingness to show up every single day, no matter what. By the time he was in his mid-40s, he had a solid business, a nice home, a good relationship with his 2 grown kids, and a front porch he genuinely loved sitting on. He was not rich in the way people show off on social media, but he was comfortable. More importantly, he was at peace. And anyone who has truly been through hard times knows that peace is worth more than anything money can buy. So there he was, Sunday morning, coffee, quiet, and then he heard it, the sound of a car engine. But not just any engine. This one had that deep, low rumble that makes people turn their heads without even meaning to. David looked up slowly from his coffee cup, and what he saw almost made him laugh. A bright red Ferrari was rolling down his street, slow, like it wanted to be seen. It passed 2 houses, then slowed down even more, and then it parked, right in front of his house, right there at the curb like it belonged there. David set his coffee down. The door of the Ferrari opened, and out stepped a woman, well-dressed, heels on a Sunday morning, a designer handbag, hair done perfectly. She looked like she had spent a long time getting ready for this moment. And when she turned and started walking toward his porch, David felt something in his chest. Not excitement, not joy, more like a quiet, familiar weight. Because he knew her. He knew her very well. Her name was Rebecca, and once upon a time, she had been the woman he loved more than anything in this world. They had dated for almost 4 years, back when David was still building his business, still figuring out his life, still the kind of man who was going somewhere, but hadn't quite arrived yet. Rebecca had come into his life like a storm, loud, beautiful, exciting. She made him feel alive in a way he hadn't experienced before. But Rebecca had a problem with patience. She wanted the finished version of a man, not the man who was still being built. She liked nice things. She liked status. She liked walking into a room with someone who already had everything figured out. And David, honest, hard-working, but still grinding, wasn't quite that man yet, not in her eyes. So she left. She didn't make a big scene about it. She just slowly pulled away. And then one day, she called him and said she had met someone else, someone with a bigger name, a bigger account, a bigger lifestyle, and that was it. She was gone. David was hurt. Of course he was. He spent a few months trying to make sense of it. But then something shifted in him. He stopped trying to understand her choice and started focusing on himself. That he built his business bigger. He became a better father. He fixed up his home. He got that porch he always wanted. And somewhere along the way, the pain of losing Rebecca turned into something else, gratitude. Because losing her made him build the best version of himself. That was almost 6 years ago. And now here she was, walking up the steps of his porch on a Sunday morning, with a Ferrari parked at the curb. "David," she said, smiling like no time had passed at all. Her voice was smooth, warm, the same way he remembered it. "I know this is unexpected." "It is," he said. He didn't stand up. He just looked at her. She glanced back at the car, then at him, and she took a breath, like she had been rehearsing what she was about to say. "I've done a lot of thinking," she began. "I made mistakes, I know that. I left when I shouldn't have. I chose the wrong things over the right person, and I have had to live with that every single day." David didn't say anything. He picked up his coffee and took a slow sip. She kept going. She told him about the man she had left him for, how that relationship had fallen apart after 2 years, how she had moved on to someone else after that, someone even wealthier, and how that had also ended, not with heartbreak, but with a quiet kind of emptiness that she couldn't shake. She told him she had everything she thought she wanted, the money, the travel, the lifestyle. But none of it felt like enough. None of it felt like home. And then she said it. "I got the Ferrari for you," she said, pointing back at the car. "I know you always loved cars. It's yours, David. No strings. Or whatever strings you want. I just want a chance to show you that I've changed." The street was so quiet in that moment, even the birds seemed to stop. David looked at the car. A Ferrari. Red. Sitting right there in front of his house. He had liked cars his whole life, that part was true. When he was younger, he used to cut out pictures of sports cars from magazines and stick them on his wall. And here was one, in real life, being offered to him like a gift. He looked at it for a few seconds. Then he looked at Rebecca. And he felt nothing. Not the nothing of anger. Not the nothing of trying to be tough. Just the honest, clear nothing of a man who has moved on so completely that there is simply no space left for what is being offered. He thought about those years after she left. The early mornings. The long days. The nights when he was tired, but kept going anyway. He thought about the moment his business crossed a milestone he once thought was impossible. He thought about his daughter calling him just to say she was proud of him. He thought about the first morning he sat on this porch and realized, I am okay. I am genuinely, deeply okay. He had not built that life waiting for Rebecca to come back. He had built it letting her go. He stood up, not in an angry way, not dramatically. He just stood up, the way a man stands when a conversation is over. "Rebecca," he said, and his voice was calm, the kind of calm that isn't forced. "I hear everything you're saying, and I don't have any bad feelings toward you. I really don't. What happened between us, that was a long time ago. You made your choices, I made mine. And I'm good. I'm actually really good." She started to say something, but he kept going, gently. "The car is beautiful. I mean that. But I don't want it. And I don't want to go back to something we left behind years ago. Not because I'm angry. Not because I'm trying to punish you. Just because it doesn't make sense for my life anymore." He looked at her steadily. "I need you to leave my porch." Rebecca blinked. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You don't even want to think about it?" "No," he said simply. "I don't." And the way he said it, no edge, no coldness, no performance. That was what got her. She had prepared for arguments. She had prepared for anger, for him to slam a door, for him to say harsh things she could push back against. She had not prepared for this. For a man who was simply, completely done. Not out of bitterness. Out of wholeness. She stood there for a moment longer than felt comfortable. The Ferrari keys were in her right hand. She looked down at them, then back at him. And for the first time that morning, something honest moved across her face. Not the practiced warmth she had walked up with, but something real. Something that looked a lot like the moment a person finally understands a truth they have been running from. She had come here thinking that the right gesture, the right words, the right car would open a door. But the door wasn't locked. It wasn't even closed, really. It just didn't lead anywhere she could follow anymore. He had walked too far in a direction she had never taken. And the distance between them wasn't measurable in years. It was measurable in choices. "Okay," she said quietly. "Just that one word." She walked back down the porch steps. Slowly this time, not with the confident stride she had come up with. She got to the Ferrari, opened the door, and before she got in, she looked back one more time. David had already sat back down. He had his coffee in his hand again. He was looking out at his yard, at the flowers along the side of the house that his daughter had helped him plant last spring, at the clean path he had laid himself, at the small but well-kept world he had made for himself. He was not watching her leave. The Ferrari engine started, that deep, expensive sound, and pulled away from the curb. David listened to it fade down the street until he couldn't hear it anymore. He took a long sip of his coffee. An older neighbor from across the street had been watching the whole thing from his driveway, pretending to check his mailbox. He caught David's eye and gave a slow nod, the kind of nod that men give each other when no words are needed. David nodded back. Later that evening, David's daughter called him. They talked for a while about nothing in particular. Her job, his week, a funny thing that had happened to her on the way to the grocery store. At some point, she asked how his Sunday was. "Quiet," he said. "Really good, actually." He didn't tell her about Rebecca. He didn't tell her about the Ferrari or the porch or any of it. Because in his mind, it wasn't really a story about those things. It wasn't a story about winning or getting even or proving something to someone who had once hurt him. It was just a Sunday morning, and a man who knew exactly who he was, and exactly what he had, and exactly what he did not need. That night, sitting in his living room with the TV on low, David thought about it all one more time. Not with anger, not with sadness, not with pride either. Just with the quiet, solid feeling of a man who had made peace with his past so completely that even the most expensive reminder of it couldn't shake him. Some people spend their whole lives chasing things: money, status, the attention of people who once walked away from them. And some people, a few, the lucky ones who do the real work, reach a place where none of that is interesting anymore, where a Sunday morning on the porch with a cup of coffee is genuinely, truly enough. David was one of those people, and no Ferrari in the world was going to change that.